Deep within the volcanic forests of Hawaii, where molten earth once tore the land apart. Entire villages sit hidden beneath towering trees and creeping fog. The ground is still warm in some places. The air smells of ash and wet leaves. And the forest never truly feels silent. Locals speak in hushed voices about villages swallowed by lava, cursed by ancient spirits, and abandoned after unspeakable events. They say the trees remember the screams. The soil remembers the blood. And the spirits of those who never escaped still walk the jungle paths at night. Travelers who wander too far into these forests report hearing drums with no source, chanting carried by the wind, and footsteps pacing them from just beyond the trees. Some say the volcanoes did not only destroy these villages. They awakened something beneath them. Tonight, we journey into the heart of Hawaii's volcanic forests, to uncover 20 haunted villages where fire met forest, and the dead never truly left. If you were standing alone in the jungle, surrounded by ancient trees and glowing lava stone, and heard your name whispered from the darkness, would you answer or would you run? Pause. Breathe. And step carefully. Because the forest is listening. Hello my dear friend, and welcome. I hope you are safe, wherever you are listening from tonight. Before we begin, take a moment. Slow your breathing. Let the outside world fade away. Hawaii is often seen as paradise. Golden beaches. Warm sunlight. Endless ocean horizons. But far from the shores, deep within the volcanic forests, lies another Hawaii. An older one. A darker one. Here, villages were built on sacred land, beside active volcanoes believed to be homes of powerful spirits. People lived in balance with fire and earth, until the balance was broken. Lava flows erased homes overnight. Forests swallowed pathways. And entire communities vanished, leaving behind only ruins, bones, and stories too frightening to forget. Even now, locals avoid certain trails after sunset. They say the forest changes when night falls. Shadows move where nothing should be. Voices call out from villages that no longer exist. Some who enter these places return shaken, unable to sleep, haunted by dreams of fire and faces watching from the trees. Others never return at all. And before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you discovered an abandoned village deep in a volcanic forest, untouched by time, would you explore it to uncover the truth, or would you leave immediately and never look back? The village of Keahi stood at the edge of a slow-moving lava field, a place where the land breathed warmth and the ground shimmered beneath the sun. For generations, the people lived with the volcano as a silent neighbor. It was part of their horizon, part of their stories, and part of their daily lives. They believed it understood them, and that respect was enough to keep it calm. Homes were built from dark stone and timber, paths worn smooth by bare feet, and fields carefully carved where the soil was rich and black. At night, the glow from the distant lava reflected softly against the clouds, a familiar sight that brought comfort instead of fear. Children grew up learning the signs of the mountain, the gentle tremors, the sigh of steam, the low rumble that meant nothing at all. The earth did not warn them. The air did not change. The animals did not flee. Without ceremony, the volcano tore itself open. A violent roar shattered the silence, louder than thunder and deeper than any storm. Fire climbed into the sky as the mountain split, and rivers of molten stone surged forward with terrifying speed. The ground shook so hard that walls collapsed before anyone could understand what was happening. Cries filled the air as the heat pressed in from all sides. Parents carried children. Neighbors pulled one another from the debris. Many did not. Lava swallowed the lower homes first, pouring through doorways and across paths that had been walked for centuries. The village was consumed in waves, each one faster and hotter than the last. By dawn, Keahi was gone, buried beneath a hardened sea of black stone that steamed and cracked as it cooled. The survivors never returned to rebuild. They settled far away, carrying the memory of the night like a wound that never closed. Over time, Keahi faded from maps, then from records. Until it existed only in whispers and warnings shared with travelers who passed too close to the old lava field. Centuries later, the land appears quiet. Trees have grown around the edges, their roots twisted over stone that was once liquid fire. Birds nest where rooftops once stood. Moss clings to the hardened surface, softening its harsh lines. To the untrained eye, it looks peaceful. But locals say the ground remembers. On quiet nights, when the wind is still and the moon is low, glowing footprints appear along the old paths. They shine faintly, as if lit from within, forming trails that lead nowhere. The prints emerge slowly, one after another, as though unseen runners are fleeing once more from the advancing fire. Those who have seen them say the forest grows unnaturally silent when they appear. Insects stop buzzing. Leaves stop rustling. Even the air seems to hold its breath. Then come the sounds. The echo of running feet moves through the trees, rhythmic and frantic, circling the field without ever crossing it. The steps grow faster, then fade, only to return again from another direction. Sometimes, beneath the sound of movement, faint screams rise from below the stone, muffled and distant, as if trapped beneath layers of time and rock. Visitors who step too close feel intense heat radiating upward, despite the lava having cooled centuries ago. The warmth presses against their skin, sudden and undeniable, forcing them to step back. Instruments show nothing unusual. The stone remains solid and cold to the touch. Elders believe the final moments of Keahi were burned into the land itself. They say the terror, the desperation, and the sorrow seeped into the lava as it hardened, locking the memory in place. The mountain, once patient, absorbed everything it destroyed and refuses to let it fade. Those who ignore the warning sometimes report strange dreams after visiting the site. They speak of running through smoke, of heat at their backs, of paths that vanish beneath their feet. They wake with the smell of ash in their noses and the sound of pounding footsteps in their ears. Keahi is not marked by signs or fences. Nothing tells you where to stop. The land relies on instinct to keep the living away. Most people feel it, an unspoken pressure urging them to turn back before stepping onto the old paths. The volcano stands quiet now, its slopes dark against the sky. But the village beneath the lava is not silent. It waits, glowing softly in the memory of the earth, forever running, forever burning, and never truly at rest. Hidden beneath thick ferns lies the ruins of Mekualua, a village erased from maps yet alive in whispered memory. The land itself seems to guard the secret, wrapped in layers of green that grow thicker with every passing season. From above, the canopy looks peaceful, almost inviting. From the ground, the forest presses close, damp and watchful, as if aware that something beneath it should not be disturbed. Mekualua was once a place of gentle routines. Mornings carried the sound of water poured over stone, of voices greeting the day, of children running barefoot along black volcanic paths warmed by the sun. Homes were built low and sturdy, shaped by wind and rain, and the village moved in harmony with the land. Elders spoke of respect for the forest, for it remembered everything. No one imagined that the forest would one day remember them in silence. The disappearances began slowly. One child failed to return from gathering fruit near the tree line. At first, it was treated as an accident, a misstep, a moment of childish wandering. Families searched with calm urgency, calling names that echoed softly and returned unanswered. When night fell, lanterns glowed between the trees like drifting stars, but the forest offered no sign. Days later, another child vanished. Then another. Search parties formed at dawn, moving outward in widening circles. They found no broken branches, no disturbed soil, no trace of struggle. The volcanic stone paths remained smooth and dark, as if untouched by fear or flight. What they did find came later, near an old flow of hardened lava beyond the village boundary. Pressed into the stone were small handprints, too perfect to be accidental. The rock beneath them was scorched, marked as if by intense heat long after the lava had cooled. The handprints were child-sized, fingers splayed, frozen in a moment that suggested reaching or play rather than pain. No blood stained the ground. No tracks led away. The forest remained dense and still, its ferns arching overhead like a curtain drawn closed. As the weeks passed, nights in Mekualua grew unbearable. Laughter began to drift through the trees after sunset. It was light and playful, the kind that once filled the village paths at dusk. Parents would freeze in their homes, breath held, listening as the sound moved slowly between trunks and leaves. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the laughter would stop, leaving a silence so complete it rang in the ears. The elders spoke of old warnings, stories meant to keep children close after dark. They said the forest could borrow voices, could learn the sounds of joy, and use them to call the unwary. These stories had always ended with reminders, not with fear. Now, the reminders felt too late. Search parties returned night after night with nothing. Dogs refused to go past certain points, whining and pulling away as if the air itself repelled them. Torches flickered strangely near the lava fields, their light bending and dimming without wind. Even the bravest villagers began to avoid the forest after sunset. The final disappearance happened in broad daylight. A group of children played near the center of the village, within sight of several homes. One moment there were 6. The next, there were 5. No scream was heard. No movement caught the eye. Only a sudden gap where a child had been standing, as if the space itself had been quietly erased. That evening, Mekualua gathered for the last time. Decisions were made with shaking hands and lowered voices. Survival outweighed tradition. Before dawn, families packed what they could carry. Offerings were left at the edge of the forest, placed carefully among the ferns. No one looked back as they followed the path away from the village, fearing that even memory might be enough to draw something after them. Mekualua was abandoned in a single morning. Rain and growth reclaimed it quickly. Roofs collapsed, walls sank, and paths disappeared beneath moss and leaf. The forest closed the gap, patient and thorough. Years later, hikers occasionally stumble upon the ruins by accident. They speak of a sudden chill despite the heat, of an uneasy sense of being watched. Some notice faint markings on exposed stone, hand-sized and darkened, as if burned in long ago. Most leave without lingering. A few report hearing laughter at night. Soft. Distant. Almost friendly. It drifts through the trees and fades before they can locate its source. Those who hear it rarely camp nearby. They feel an instinctive pull to keep moving, to put distance between themselves and the sound. No official records explain what happened at Mekualua. There are no confirmed theories, no evidence that satisfies reason. The village exists now only as a cautionary absence, a reminder that not all mysteries leave scars that can be measured. Hidden beneath thick ferns, the ruins remain. The forest stands tall above them, breathing slowly, holding its secret. And when night falls, and the wind moves just right, the laughter sometimes returns, playful and brief, followed by a silence that feels far too aware. The village of Hanuahi once rested at the edge of a vast forest where stone paths met towering trees. Smoke was part of daily life there, rising gently from hearths and ritual fires. For generations, fire was treated not as a tool, but as a living force that demanded care and discipline. Elders believed flame carried memory, and that it listened. Children were taught early to respect embers, to watch how fire breathed, and to never turn their backs on it for long. Rituals marked the turning of seasons and the passing of years. At dusk, villagers gathered in clearings where circles of ash marked ancient ceremony grounds. Flames were fed with resin and herbs, and sparks climbed into the dark like drifting stars. The forest stood close, silent and watchful. Firelight reflected off bark and leaves, painting the woods in slow-moving shadows. For centuries, nothing went wrong. The fire always returned to rest. On one dry evening, during a ritual meant to renew protection over the land, the air changed. Wind arrived without warning, sliding through the trees in sharp bursts. The flames grew restless. Embers lifted higher than intended, scattering beyond the stone circle. Those present tried to contain it, using soil and chants passed down through memory. But the fire no longer listened. It leapt outward, catching dry undergrowth, racing toward the forest edge. By nightfall, the trees were burning. The fire spread faster than anyone could follow, carried by wind and heat. Villagers fled toward the river, watching as the forest became a wall of moving light. Smoke filled the valley, thick and suffocating. The sky glowed red for miles. For days, the fire did not stop. It consumed roots and canopies alike, leaving nothing untouched. When rain finally fell, it hissed against embers still alive beneath the soil. When the smoke cleared, the forest was unrecognizable. Tree trunks stood stripped and black, frozen in twisted shapes. The ground was layered in gray ash that shifted with every step. No birds returned. No insects stirred. The silence felt heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The village survived, but it did not celebrate. People spoke less. Fires were kept small and watched closely, never again used for ceremony. Weeks later, the first reports came. Hunters moving through the burned forest claimed to see movement between the dead trees. Shapes that rose from the ash and walked slowly through the smoke-stained air. At a distance, they looked human, but closer inspection brought unease. Their bodies appeared formed from soot and residue, barely held together. Where faces should be, only glowing points of light remained, pulsing softly like embers refusing to fade. The air felt warm but empty, as if sound itself had been drained away. Footsteps made no noise on the ash-covered ground. The figures never approached the village, but they moved along the paths once used for rituals. Always at dusk or before dawn, when light was uncertain. When observed too closely, they dissolved into drifting particles, leaving scorched impressions behind. Elders began to fear that the fire had not simply burned the forest, but awakened something bound within it. Stories long dismissed as symbolic returned with new weight. Tales of ash walkers, remnants of rituals broken and flames left unfinished. The belief grew that the land remembered the mistake, and that the figures were echoes shaped by heat and loss. No attempt was made to confront them. The villagers chose distance and silence instead. Over time, vegetation slowly returned, but the blackened trunks remained standing among new growth. They rose like reminders of a moment when control was lost. Travelers passing near Hanuahi still report seeing faint lights moving between the trees at night. The village itself remains quiet, its people careful and watchful. Fire is still used, but only for warmth and food, never ceremony. The forest endures, marked by scars that do not fade. And when the wind moves through the burned trunks, it carries a low sound, almost like breath. Those who hear it say it feels like being watched by something patient. Something born from flame and ash. The land remembers, and it waits. The first thing visitors notice at Pele Hollow is the sound. Before the heat, before the smell of sulfur. before the vast dark slope of the mountain fills the horizon. A low rhythm drifts through the air, steady and deliberate, like distant chanting carried on warm wind. The path into the hollow winds through hardened lava fields that shimmer under the sun. Each step feels slightly unsteady, as if the ground is remembering movement from long ago. Beneath the surface, a quiet vibration hums, subtle but persistent. It feels less like an earthquake and more like a pulse. Long before visitors arrived, before trails and warning signs, a village stood here. It was built in a natural basin formed by ancient flows, sheltered on all sides by black stone walls, and watched over by the towering volcano above. The people believed this place was chosen. They believed the mountain was alive, aware, and deserving of honor. The village was shaped around ritual. Stone platforms were placed with careful alignment toward the summit. At sunrise and dusk, the villagers gathered to sing. Their voices echoed against the lava walls, blending with the breath of steam vents. The songs were said to soothe the fire below. As long as the rhythm continued, the mountain remained calm. Offerings were simple but constant. Fruit, woven leaves, carved tokens of bone and wood. Nothing was wasted. Everything was returned to the earth. The balance mattered more than the gift itself. This cycle continued for generations, and the village thrived in the shadow of fire. Then the songs began to fade. Stories suggest the change was slow. A mist ritual during a storm. A shortened ceremony during illness. Over time, the hollow grew quieter. The people still lived their lives, but the mountain no longer heard them as it once had. Elders spoke of unease. Animals avoided the basin. The ground grew warmer at night. Shadows along the stone walls began to stretch upward, bending toward the slope as if pulled by an unseen force. Some claimed the mountain was waiting. The final offering was never recorded. There is no legend of a warning or a dramatic sign. Only silence. The eruption came without spectacle. Lava did not explode skyward. It rose calmly, spilling over the rim like a slow tide of light. Streams of fire followed the ancient channels, tracing the very paths once used for devotion. Stone cracked. Wood vanished. The village was consumed not in fury, but in certainty. By morning, the hollow was sealed beneath cooling rock. The mountain stood still again. No songs remained. Centuries passed. When explorers and hikers rediscovered the basin, they found an unnatural smoothness beneath their feet. Tools could not penetrate certain layers. Instruments failed without explanation. Compasses tilted toward the summit, even when powered off. Those who linger too long report the same sensations. The chanting returns at irregular intervals, sometimes clear, sometimes barely more than breath. The ground vibrates in response, synchronized with no known geological pattern. Shadows behave strangely, leaning uphill even when the sun says otherwise. No structures remain visible, yet some claim to see outlines beneath the rock. Doorways pressed into stone. Platforms shaped by hands long gone. At sunset, the hollow darkens faster than the surrounding land, as if light is being drawn away. Scientists attribute the phenomena to heat pockets and magnetic anomalies. Locals offer no such explanations. They speak instead of remembrance. Of a place that was built not to resist fire, but to live alongside it. At night, when the air cools and the wind settles, the chanting grows clearer. It does not echo. It surrounds. Visitors describe the sensation of being watched, not with threat, but expectation. As if something is waiting for recognition. Some leave offerings at the edge of the basin. A flower. A stone. A moment of silence. Whether out of respect or unease, no one can say. What is known is that those who do often feel the ground grow still beneath them. Pele Hollow remains officially uninhabited. No structures are permitted. Yet the mountain continues to breathe, and the hollow continues to listen. The story endures not as a warning, but as a reminder. Balance is not maintained by force. It is sustained by attention. In a place shaped by fire and faith, the absence of reverence was enough to awaken the earth. And even now, beneath layers of stone and time, something remembers the sound of voices raised in harmony with the mountain. The forest village of Nahelepa once rested beneath a wide canopy of towering trees. Where sunlight filtered through layers of green and the air carried the steady rhythm of birds and wind. The people who lived there believed the forest was alive, watching over them as long as they respected its boundaries. Their homes were simple, built from wood and woven leaves, blending so naturally into the landscape that travelers often passed without noticing them. Life in Nahelepa followed the pace of the forest. Mornings began with soft mist drifting between trunks. Evenings ended with low voices and the sound of insects rising together. The villagers gathered food, tended small gardens, and shared stories that honored the land and those who came before them. Nothing about the village felt fragile. Then, without warning, the sickness arrived. It began quietly. One person complained of exhaustion. Another struggled to breathe. By the next morning, several villagers could no longer stand. Their skin grew pale, their movements slow, and their voices weak. No wounds appeared. No fever burned. The illness moved unseen, spreading from home to home in the span of a single night. Panic followed confusion. Families tried remedies they had trusted for generations. Healers burned herbs and whispered prayers into the trees. None of it slowed the sickness. By sunset, the forest paths were filled with the sound of coughing and hurried footsteps. The air itself felt wrong, heavy and thick, as though the forest was holding something back. People began to die before help could arrive. With fear pressing in from all sides, the villagers buried the bodies hastily beneath the trees. There was no time for ceremony. Shallow graves were dug between roots and stones, marked only by broken branches and scattered leaves. The forest accepted them without resistance, closing over the disturbed soil as if nothing had happened. By the second night, those still standing fled. They left behind homes, tools, and half-prepared meals. They ran until their lungs burned, afraid to slow down, afraid to look back. From a distant ridge, they watched the village sink into darkness as the forest reclaimed it. No one returned. Years passed. Then decades. Nahelepa vanished from memory, surviving only in fragments of stories passed down in hushed voices. Travelers who wandered near the area reported strange sensations. The forest grew unusually dense there, the trees closer together, their branches woven tightly overhead. Sunlight struggled to reach the ground. Even animals avoided the place, skirting its edges without sound. Those who stepped inside noticed the air first. Breathing became difficult, as though the forest itself pressed against the chest. Each breath felt shallow, incomplete. The deeper one walked, the heavier the air became, carrying a faint scent of damp earth and something older, something unsettled. Sound behaved strangely among the trees. Footsteps echoed where they should not. Leaves rustled without wind. Sometimes, faint movements appeared between the trunks, just beyond clear sight. The forest seemed to shift, guiding visitors in slow, looping paths that always led back to the same places. At dusk, the figures appear. Wrapped in pale burial cloth, they stand between the trees, partially hidden by shadows and bark. Their forms are thin and motionless at first, blending into the vertical lines of the forest. Slowly, they begin to move. Arms lift. Hands extend outward, fingers curl gently, as if asking for help they never received. They make no sound. Those who witness them describe an overwhelming pressure in the chest, a tightening that forces shallow breaths. Panic rises without reason. The instinct to flee becomes irresistible. Many turn and run, never stopping until the forest releases them. Some are not so lucky. A few explorers claim the figures follow at a distance, never touching, never approaching too closely. They simply remain present, watching, waiting. When the forest finally ends, the shapes fade into the trees, leaving behind silence and the lingering sense of being observed. Elders say the sickness never truly left Nahelepa. They believe it soaked into the soil alongside the hurried burials, trapped beneath roots and stones. The forest absorbed the fear, the confusion, and the final breaths of those who fell. Over time, it learned how to reflect that suffering back to the living. The heaviness in the air is not physical, they say. It is memory. Those who spend too long within the forest often report lingering effects. Breathing troubles continue long after they leave. Sleep becomes restless. Dreams fill with narrow paths and outstretched hands, with the feeling of being surrounded but never touched. Doctors find no cause. The symptoms fade only when the dreams stop. Nahelepa remains unmarked and unnamed on most maps. There are no signs warning travelers away. The forest relies on sensation rather than words to protect its secrets. Most people feel the change before they see it, an invisible weight that urges them to turn back. The village beneath the trees is gone, but it has not disappeared. It waits in the air, in the silence, and in the spaces between the trunks. Breathing grows difficult there for a reason. The forest remembers the night it was left behind, and it has never learned how to let go. Kupa'ahi sat beside a lava tube carved long ago by rivers of fire. The opening rested low against the slope, wide enough for a person to step inside without bending. From a distance, it appeared ordinary, another dark hollow in a land shaped by heat and time. For generations, villagers passed it daily without concern, trusting the stone as they trusted the ground beneath their feet. Trusting the stone as they trusted the ground beneath their feet. The lava tube was used for storage. Tools were kept there during storms. Dried goods rested in the cool air when homes grew too warm. Children were warned not to play near the entrance, not out of fear, but out of respect for the sharp rock and sudden drops inside. It was considered a practical place, silent and dependable. That silence did not last. The first sound was dismissed as wind. A low echo drifted out one evening as a villager retrieved supplies. A low echo drifted out one evening as a villager retrieved supplies. It sounded like breath moving through stone, uneven and distant. Lava tubes were known to carry sound, and no one questioned it further. The entrance returned to stillness, dark and patient. Days later, voices followed. They were faint at first, barely more than murmurs that blended with insects and rustling leaves. Some thought they heard their names, spoken softly, as if from far away. Others claimed it was just the mind filling empty space with familiar patterns. The lava tube remained useful, and life continued around it. The first disappearance unsettled the village but did not stop it. A man entered the tube before sunset to retrieve stored tools. When he did not return, a neighbor checked the entrance. His footsteps echoed briefly, then faded. He came back out alone, calling the missing man's name. Only his own voice answered. Searches were organized quickly. Torches cast long, trembling light along the stone walls. The lava tube narrowed as it descended, twisting gently out of sight. Footprints were found at first, then nothing. The ground turned smooth and dark, as if wiped clean. No belongings. No signs of struggle. The man was simply gone. After that, villagers avoided the entrance at night. During the day, whispers became clearer. They rose from within the tube and drifted outward, shaping themselves into words almost recognizable. Some sounded comforting. Some sounded curious. The voices never shouted. They invited. A woman passing with water jars stopped when she heard a familiar tone. It matched the voice of her sister, lost years earlier to illness. The sound came from deep inside the lava tube, gentle and calm. She stood frozen, heart racing, until another villager pulled her away. The whispers stopped the moment she stepped back. Fear replaced routine. The lava tube was no longer used for storage. Offerings were placed near the entrance instead, left quietly at dawn. Elders spoke of places where the earth listened, where sound could linger and learn. They warned that some spaces did not forget the voices that entered them. Despite the warnings, curiosity remained. An explorer arrived months later, drawn by stories carried beyond the village. He brought rope, lights, and confidence shaped by experience. He laughed at the idea of a living darkness and prepared to enter while villagers watched from a careful distance. His light vanished first, swallowed by a bend in the stone. His voice echoed as he described the walls, the temperature, the depth. Then his words slowed. He paused often, responding to things no one else could hear. The rope went slack. When villagers pulled it back, it was frayed and warm, as if rubbed against stone that should have been cold. No one entered again after that. Over time, the area around Kupa'ahi changed. Birds avoided the trees nearest the opening. Insects grew quiet as the sun set. The air carried a faint vibration, felt more than heard, like distant humming beneath the ground. Those who passed nearby reported whispers even when they did not stop. The voices seemed to follow briefly, then retreat. They never crossed far from the entrance, as if bound to the darkness below. At night, the lava tube breathed. Cool air flowed outward in slow pulses. Shadows near the opening shifted without light. The darkness inside appeared layered, deeper than it should have been. Absorbing torchlight rather than reflecting it. Those who stared too long felt an urge to step closer. A sense of recognition without memory. Eventually, paths were rerouted. The village moved its center away from Kupa'ahi. The lava tube remained, unchanged and waiting. Modern explorers still visit the site, guided by maps and stories. Most keep their distance. A few approach with recording devices, hoping to capture proof of what the villagers described. Their recordings often pick up faint sounds, breaths between words, murmurs that grow clearer when replayed in silence. Some explorers claim the whispers call them by name. The lava tube has never collapsed. Its entrance remains open, as if maintained by unseen hands. The stone around it is smooth, worn not by water, but by something passing repeatedly along the same paths. Kupa'ahi no longer serves the living. It stands as a reminder carved in volcanic rock, a place where sound becomes memory and darkness becomes more than absence. Those who listen too closely still feel the pull. And the voices continue, patient and endless, echoing from a depth that never seems to reach its end. The village of Pu'alehu once sat quietly between rolling hills and a dense forest that locals believed was older than memory. Stone homes lined narrow paths, and lanterns glowed softly each evening as families gathered after long days of work. The ground beneath the village had always felt solid and dependable. No one imagined it could turn against them. Pu'alehu was known for its calm routines and deep connection to the land. The forest provided timber, food, and shelter from harsh winds. In return, villagers treated it with care, never taking more than needed. Children learn the names of trees before they learn the names of distant places. Life followed the slow rhythm of seasons, and nothing seemed capable of breaking it. On a night without warning, the earth shifted. At first, it felt like a passing tremor, a low vibration beneath the feet. Then the ground began to roll violently. Stone walls cracked. Roofs collapsed inward. The paths twisted as if pulled apart by unseen hands. Lanterns shattered, spilling light across dust-filled air. The quake grew stronger with each breath, shaking the village until the sound of breaking stone drowned out every human voice. The forest responded as well. Trees swayed violently, roots tearing free from soil. Hillsides collapsed, sending earth and debris rushing downward. In moments, the boundary between village and forest disappeared. Homes were dragged apart, swallowed by falling ground and advancing trees. When the shaking finally stopped, Pu'alehu was gone. At dawn, nothing remained but broken land and silence. The forest pressed inward where the village once stood. Soil covered stone. Vines crept over collapsed beams. Paths vanished beneath moss and leaves. Within weeks it was as if the village had never existed. Travelers passing nearby noticed only an unusual stillness. A place where birds refused to sing. The air felt strangely heavy. Years passed. And stories began to surface. At night, faint lantern lights appeared deep among the trees. They flickered between trunks, hovering at the height of a human hand. Some followed the lights and heard the soft crunch of footsteps moving beside them, as if someone walked on gravel paths that no longer existed. Witnesses reported hearing sounds carried on the wind. Low voices, indistinct and layered, rising and falling like conversation remembered but not understood. The forest floor, thick with leaves, somehow echoed with the rhythm of many feet moving together. Yet when the lights vanished, nothing remained. No tracks. No warmth. Only silence. Researchers who visited the site found no physical explanation. The ground showed signs of massive upheaval long ago. But nothing unusual remained on the surface. Equipment malfunctioned after sunset. Compasses spun without settling. The deeper one walked into the forest, the stronger the sense of presence became. As if the land itself was aware of being observed. Some believe the village did not simply disappear, but became trapped in a moment it could not escape. The quake was sudden, violent, and final. There was no time for farewells, no time for understanding. The theory suggests that the energy of that night imprinted itself on the land, replaying fragments of life as it once was. The lantern lights are said to follow old routes. Paths where homes once stood. Open spaces where people gathered. Those who recognize the pattern say the lights pause where doorways used to be. Lingering briefly before moving on. Footsteps rise and fade in careful rhythm. As if people are still navigating familiar ground. Locals avoid the forest after dark. Not out of fear alone, but out of respect. Not out of fear alone, but out of respect. The place feels occupied, not hostile, but deeply private. Those who ignore warnings often leave unsettled, describing vivid dreams of shaking ground and falling walls. Dreams that end just before impact, waking them in silence. The forest continues to grow, but it does not erase everything. Beneath roots and soil, the outline of Pu'alehu remains. The land remembers the weight of homes, the warmth of lanterns, the sound of lives moving together. Each night, when the air cools and shadows stretch, those memories rise softly to the surface. The village no longer exists as it once did, but it has not fully faded. But it has not fully faded. A reminder that even when structures vanish and names are forgotten, the land holds on. And names are forgotten. The land holds on. And sometimes, when night falls and the forest grows quiet, Pu'alehu walks again. Mist arrives without warning along the upper ridges of the island. One moment the trail is clear, lined with damp stone and low ferns. The next, the world softens and dissolves into pale gray. Sound travels strangely here. Breathing feels louder than it should. This is where stories of Ku'alalapalapa begin. The name is old, older than mapped routes or carved markers. Those who search for it rarely agree on where it starts. Some claim it opens between two leaning trees. Others insist it appears beside a stream that vanishes as soon as it is crossed. What remains consistent is what happens once the mist closes in. Travelers speak of walking with confidence at first. The ground feels solid. The slope makes sense. Yet after a time, the forest begins to repeat itself. The same twisted route. The same split stone. The same bird call echoing from behind. Hours pass, though watches fail and phones lose signal. Panic does not arrive immediately. Confusion comes first. The mist thickens but never fully blinds. Shapes remain visible just enough to mislead. A clearing seems close, then slips away. The path curves gently, always returning to where it began. Footprints overlap, forming circles that suggest movement without progress. It is during these moments that the drums begin. At first, they are mistaken for the pulse in Oni's ears. A low, steady rhythm, distant and irregular. With time, the sound separates itself from the body. It grows clearer, deeper, echoing through the ground rather than the air. Each step seems to draw it closer. Some travelers follow the sound. Others try to flee from it. The forest changes subtly as the drums grow louder. Trees thin out. The air feels warmer, heavier. Moss-covered stones appear where soil once lay. The mist begins to swirl instead of drift, moving with purpose rather than wind. The circle breaks. Those who reach the center of Ku'alalapalapa describe an abrupt stillness. The drums stop. The mist lifts just enough to reveal what was not there before. Stone walls rise from the ground, ancient and weathered, arranged in careful symmetry. Platforms sit half-sunken into the earth, their surfaces smooth from use long forgotten. The ruins appear complete, yet abandoned. No signs of recent activity exist, and yet nothing feels decayed. Leaves do not cover the stones. Vines avoid the walls. The space feels maintained by something unseen. Many report the sensation of arrival rather than discovery. As if the place had been waiting. In the center stands a wide stone circle, darker than the rest, polished by countless footsteps. When touched, it feels warm despite the cool air. Some believe this was once a gathering place, where sound and movement shaped the path itself. A place where rhythm guided direction, and direction was never fixed. Those who linger describe unease, not fear, but the sense of being observed. Shadows fall in unnatural angles, leaning inward. The mist hangs at the edge of the ruins like a boundary, unmoving and patient. Leaving is never straightforward. Travelers who attempt to retrace their steps find the forest rearranged. Gaps close. Clearings vanish. The drums return, softer now, as if guiding rather than summoning. Following them leads away from the ruins. Though the path twists and doubles back more than once. When the mist finally clears, the forest looks ordinary again. The trail reappears where it should have been all along. Time resumes its expected pace. Hours lost cannot be explained. No physical evidence of the ruins has ever been brought back. Stones crumble when removed. Markings fade. Maps fail to hold the location. Even memories blur with repetition, details slipping away like fog under sunlight. Locals speak of Kuala not as a destination, but as a lesson. A reminder that not all paths are meant to be mastered. Some are meant to be entered only when called, and left without certainty. To this day, hikers report moments of disorientation along those ridges. A sudden drumbeat carried on still air. A curve in the trail that feels too familiar. Most never see the ruins. A few do, and rarely speak of it again. The mist continues to rise, and somewhere within it, a path waits, shifting quietly, listening for footsteps that move without urgency. And hearts willing to walk without needing to know where they will arrive. The village of Ahikanu was built where the forest grew unnaturally still. On land long regarded as sacred by those who lived beyond the hills. Elders warned that the ground beneath the trees was not empty soil, but a resting place for generations who came before. Their bones lay deep beneath the roots. And their presence was believed to linger in the earth itself. The warnings were clear, but they were ignored. Settlers arrived seeking fertile land and shelter from the wind. They saw tall trees, flowing streams, and soil dark enough to promise abundance. What they did not see, or chose not to see, was the quiet resistance of the land. The forest did not welcome them. It simply watched. Homes were razed quickly. Trees were cut. Stones were placed where none had been before. With every structure built, the ground seemed to harden, as if resisting the weight above it. Some villagers complained of unease during the first nights. Sleep felt shallow. Dreams were filled with unfamiliar faces and distant murmurs. Still, life continued. At first, the signs were subtle. Tools went missing and reappeared far from where they were left. Footprints appeared along paths after rain, too many, too close together, leading nowhere. Children spoke of feeling touched when no one was near, cold fingers brushing against their arms before vanishing. The elders of neighboring villages urged Ahikanu to leave. They said the land was not meant to be settled, that the forest carried memory and obligation. Their words were dismissed as superstition. The village believed effort and time would tame the land. Then the forest began to respond. Visitors walking between the trees felt sudden chills, even under direct sunlight. Cold hands brushed against exposed skin, lingering just long enough to be undeniable. Some turned quickly, convinced someone stood behind them, only to find empty space and silent trunks. Faces began to form in the bark. At first they appeared as natural patterns, knots and curves shaped by age. Over time, the features grew clearer. Hollow eyes. Pressed mouths. Expressions frozen in quiet warning. The faces watched from every direction, their gaze following movement through the forest. When trees were cut down, the faces appeared on the next standing trunk, closer to the village than before. Whispers followed. They moved through the trees like breath, low and steady, repeating a single word. Leave. It carried no anger, only certainty. The sound reached people in moments of silence, during walks, during sleep, during prayer. No matter how loud the village grew, the whisper always returned. Strange illnesses followed. Not sickness of the body, but of the mind. Villagers became disoriented on familiar paths. Time felt distorted. A short walk could stretch into hours. Some returned home unable to explain where they had been. Their clothes were damp with soil and leaves. Nightfall became unbearable. Shadows moved without light. Homes felt crowded despite being empty. People woke with the sensation of pressure against their chests, as if unseen weight pinned them to their beds. The ground itself seemed to shift. Foundations cracked. Doors refused to stay closed. Graves dug for the recently dead filled themselves overnight, soil packed tight as though pressed from below. No animal would approach the village anymore. Even insects avoided the area, leaving an unnatural silence that pressed against the ears. One by one, villagers began to leave. Some fled in the night, abandoning everything. Others tried to stay, believing endurance would earn forgiveness. Those who remained were never the same. Their movements slowed. Their voices softened. They stared into the forest as though listening to something no one else could hear. When the final families departed, Ahikanu was already changing. Vines crept over walls. Roots cracked stone. Paths vanished beneath leaves. The forest reclaimed the land with quiet determination, erasing signs of occupation as if correcting a mistake. Within a few years, the village no longer existed in any visible form. Yet the presence remains. Travelers who wander too close report the same sensations described long ago. Cold hands brush against them from nowhere. Faces emerge in the bark, watching silently. The whisper returns, steady and unavoidable. Those who ignore it feel an overwhelming sense of intrusion. As though they are standing where they do not belong. Breathing grows shallow. Panic rises without cause. The forest closes in, guiding them away through narrowing paths. Until they stumble back into open land. Elders say the land was never cursed. It was guarded. Ahikanu did not fall to violence or disaster. It was undone by disregard. The ground beneath it held memory, identity, and duty. Building atop it was not just an act of settlement, but a violation. Now the forest stands as it once did, tall and silent, carrying the weight of those who rest below. It does not chase. It does not punish. It only reminds. Cold hands. Watching faces. A single word repeated until it is obeyed. Leave. Molten Ridge Village once sat on a high shelf of dark stone where the earth steamed gently after rain. The ground was warm beneath bare feet. And thin lines of heat shimmered in the morning air. For decades, the village existed in balance with the land. Watching the slow movement of lava far below and trusting the familiar patterns of the mountain. That balance ended when the lava changed its course. It began as a distant glow on the horizon, brighter than usual, pulsing through the night like a second sunset. By morning, thick smoke rose from new cracks in the ground. The earth trembled in short, uneven pulses, enough to rattle cups and wake sleepers before dawn. The mountain was no longer patient. Authorities arrived quickly, urging evacuation. Maps were spread across tables, lines drawn with urgency. The lava was advancing from multiple directions, slow but relentless, cutting off roads one by one. Molten Ridge Village was becoming an island of stone surrounded by fire. Most families left within days. They packed essentials and memories, loading vehicles while ash drifted softly from the sky. Children were hurried along, confused by the silence of adults who avoided looking back. As convoys descended the ridge, the village emptied house by house, leaving behind quiet rooms and cooling hearths. Not everyone agreed to go. Some residents refused evacuation orders, insisting the lava would stop as it always had. Others believed the village itself offered protection, that leaving would break a bond formed over generations. A few simply could not imagine starting again somewhere else. As the last official transport departed, several lights still burned in Molten Ridge Village. Lava crept closer, glowing orange against blackened ground. It flows around buildings, pooling in low areas, cutting off paths without consuming the village outright. From above, Molten Ridge appeared intact, surrounded by a shifting sea of heat and smoke. Rescue teams attempted to reach the remaining residents, but the routes were too dangerous. The calls went unanswered. Then the voices began. At night, sound carries far across cooling stone. Nearby monitoring stations reported hearing distant cries drifting through the dark. The voices were human, strained and urgent, calling for help, calling for names that no one could answer. Search teams returned during daylight, scanning the area with equipment and binoculars. They found no movement. Buildings still stood, weathered but upright. There were no signals, no signs of life. When night fell again, the voices returned, echoing across the hardened lava fields. Some described the sounds as layered, overlapping, as if coming from different directions at once. Others said the voices seemed to move, growing closer, then fading, never allowing a clear location. As weeks passed, another phenomenon appeared. Thin columns of smoke began rising from the ground around the village, even where lava had long cooled. There was no fire beneath them, no visible heat source. The smoke emerged silently, twisting into the air before vanishing. Locals avoided the area after sunset. Those who ventured too close reported feelings of pressure, as if the air itself grew heavier. Some claimed to hear footsteps behind them on stone that should have been empty. When they turned, there was nothing but steam drifting low across the ground. Theories spread, cautious and restrained. Some suggested trapped air moving through underground channels. Others pointed to acoustic effects caused by cooling lava and shifting rock. None could explain why the voices sounded so deliberate, so focused on being heard. Years later, Molten Ridge Village remains uninhabited. The lava has long since cooled into jagged black rivers that encircle the site like walls. Nature has begun its slow return, with sparse plants taking hold in cracks and ash settling into soil. From a distance, the village looks peaceful, preserved in time. At night, that illusion fades. Monitoring crews still report voices on occasion, especially during temperature shifts. The sounds rise gently, then break into urgent pleas before dissolving into silence. No new smoke is seen during the day, but after dark, thin wisps sometimes curl upward, pale against the stars. No rescue attempts are made now. Molten Ridge Village stands as a quiet reminder of how quickly certainty can vanish. The mountain still looms above, silent and unmoving, as if indifferent to what it left behind. And when the wind is right and the ground cools after sunset, the echoes return, calling out across stone that offers no path back. The forest of Kumupa spreads across a quiet stretch of land where sunlight struggles to reach the ground. Tall trees stand close together, their canopies woven into a ceiling of leaves and shadow. There are no ruins, no foundations, no visible sign that people ever lived there. And yet, the forest carries a memory that refuses to fade. Long ago, a village stood within this forest clearing. Homes were built from wood and clay, arranged around shared spaces where daily life unfolded. Smoke once rose gently from cooking fires. The village was small but active, shaped by routine and familiarity. It existed in balance with the surrounding forest, taking only what was needed, leaving little trace behind. The fire came without mercy. Records of the event are scarce, but accounts agree on one detail. The flames moved fast and burned hot. Whether caused by accident or nature, the fire consumed everything. Roofs collapsed inward. Walls turned to embers. By the time rain finally fell, nothing remained but ash and heat-scarred ground. Survivors never returned. The forest reclaimed the space, growing over the burned soil as if sealing it away. Over time, even the blackened earth disappeared. New trees took root. Moss spread thick and green. The village vanished completely, erased from sight and nearly from memory. Maps stopped marking the location. Stories faded into rumor. Yet the forest never became silent. Visitors who camp near Kumupa often report unusual sounds after nightfall. The first is usually a sharp noise, like a wooden door slamming shut. It comes suddenly, without echo, and leaves behind an uneasy stillness. Those who investigate find nothing. No structures. No hinges. No wind strong enough to explain it. Soon after, softer sounds emerge. The clatter of cooking pots seems to rise from the darkness. Metal against metal. Clay against stone. The rhythm is familiar, domestic, almost comforting. It drifts through the trees at a steady pace, as if someone is preparing a meal just beyond sight. Campers report smelling warm food carried on the air. Steamed grains. Roasted roots. Simple meals remembered by the senses, not the eyes. Those who remain awake often feel watched, though nothing ever steps into view. The forest seems to hold its breath during these moments. Insects fall silent. Leaves stop rustling. The ground feels firm beneath the feet, yet something about it feels occupied, as if the space is already taken. Researchers who have visited the area during daylight hours find nothing unusual. Soil samples reveal traces of old fire damage deep below the surface. But nothing on top suggests recent activity. There are no chemical sources for the smells, no wildlife behavior that explains the sounds. Equipment functions normally until night arrives, when recordings often capture faint, rhythmic noises with no clear origin. Locals who live near the forest avoid it after sunset. Not out of fear, but caution. They speak of Kumupa as a place where the past remains active. According to their stories, the fire burned more than wood and stone. It locked moments of daily life into the land itself. Cooking never finished. Doors were never opened again. Routine continued, even after the people were gone. Some believe the forest absorbed the village, preserving its patterns the way ash preserves shape. Heat and loss left an imprint, replaying fragments of life without awareness. The sounds are not warnings. The smells are not invitations. They are echoes, repeating without intention or understanding. Those who have stayed too long describe a strange sense of belonging they cannot explain. The forest feels familiar, welcoming, almost domestic. The urge to sit, to wait, to listen becomes strong. Time seems to stretch. Only by leaving the area does the sensation break, replaced by sudden clarity and unease. At dawn, Kumupa appears peaceful once more. Sunlight filters through leaves. Birds return. The forest floor shows no trace of movement or disturbance. Everything looks untouched, ancient, and quiet. Yet the absence feels deliberate, as if the land is carefully hiding something. The village that once stood there is gone in every physical sense. No walls remain. No roads lead in. No names are carved into stone. But the forest remembers the rhythm of human life. It remembers the sound of doors at the end of a day. The comfort of shared meals. The routines that once gave the clearing purpose. When night falls and shadows deepen, those memories surface. Not as ghosts, not as figures, but as sensations woven into sound and scent. The forest of Kumupa does not reveal its past openly. It allows it to be felt, briefly and quietly, before returning to silence. A reminder that even when everything is reduced to ash, not all traces are lost. Lehumaka once rested quietly at the edge of a dense forest, where tall trees gathered so closely their branches filtered the daylight into a constant dusk. By morning, mist clung to the ground like breath held too long. By night, darkness settled early and deeply, filling every space between the trunks. The village existed in balance with this rhythm for generations. Homes were built low and sturdy, with doors facing inward toward shared paths. Fires were kept small. Sounds carried far in the still air, so voices stayed calm and measured. The forest was respected, never challenged. Children were taught where not to wander, and elders remembered a time when the trees felt farther away. The first reports were subtle. Hunters returning before sunset. Livestock refusing to enter the tree line. Dogs growling at nothing, eyes fixed on shadowed branches. No one panicked. The forest had always been alive with movement. Then the eyes appeared. They were first seen just beyond the last row of homes, where the path narrowed into undergrowth. A single glow, pale and steady, hovering at shoulder height. It vanished when approached. The next night, there were two. By the end of the week, dozens. They did not move closer. They did not retreat. They simply watched. Villagers described the eyes as neither bright nor dim, but present, like embers seen through smoke. They blinked slowly, not in unison, but with patience. The longer one stared, the more appeared, scattered through the trees at varying heights. Fear grew quietly. Night watches were organized. Drums were struck to test the silence. And the forest absorbed the sound without echo. No animals emerged. No footsteps followed. Only the eyes remained, unblinking for long stretches, then closing and opening again. Sleep became difficult. Even with doors barred and windows covered, villagers felt watched. Children spoke of light pressing against the walls. Elders reported dreams filled with the forest moving closer, tree by tree. The final night was calm. No wind stirred the leaves. No mist rose from the ground. The village fires burned low, casting long shadows across the paths. Then the eyes appeared in numbers never seen before. Hundreds of them, surrounding the village in a wide circle just beyond the cleared land. Every direction held their glow. They blinked slowly, rhythmically, like a breath being taken by something vast and unseen. No sound came from the forest. No step crossed the boundary. Yet the message was clear enough to those who stood watching. The village was no longer alone. By sunrise, Lehumaka was empty. Homes were left intact. Tools remained where they had been set down. Cooking fires cooled in their pits. No signs of struggle or damage were found. The villagers did not flee in panic. They departed with intention, carrying only what they could manage in silence. Nature reclaimed the space quickly. Paths vanished beneath vines. Roofs sagged under moss and rain. Maps marked the area as unsettled. Travelers were warned not to camp nearby. Still, the eyes never left. Those who pass the forest edge at night report the same phenomenon. As darkness deepens, faint glows emerge between the trees. They do not approach the road. They do not scatter when light is shone upon them. They remain just beyond reach, blinking slowly, patiently. Attempts to photograph the eyes often fail. Images come back blurred, empty, or distorted. Sensors malfunction. Batteries drain unexpectedly. Scientists suggest nocturnal animals, bioluminescent insects, reflections from moisture. These explanations do not account for the number, the height, or the synchronized stillness. Animals shift. Reflections scatter. The eyes remain. Those who linger too long feel a growing pressure, as if the forest itself is aware of their presence. Sounds soften. The air thickens. Peripheral vision plays tricks, suggesting movement just out of sight. The most unsettling detail is the blinking. It is slow. Deliberate. Almost thoughtful. Locals believe the forest watches not with hostility, but with memory. That's something ancient noticed when the village settled too close. That patience lasted generations, until it no longer needed to wait. And when darkness comes, and the forest grows quiet, the eyes return. Hundreds of them. Watching. Blinking. Unmoving. Waiting as they always have, just beyond the reach of light. At the base of a volcanic hill lies Ahinoho, or what remains of it. The land appears quiet now, covered in hardened earth and scattered stone, shaped by time and weather into something almost peaceful. Few would guess that a village once stood here, full of life and movement, anchored to the slope of a restless mountain. Ahinoho was built close to the volcano for a reason. The soil was warm and fertile, ideal for growing food. Steam vents provided heat during colder months. The people believed the mountain was a source of balance, not destruction, and that living beside it showed trust rather than fear. For many years, that belief seemed justified. The village thrived. Homes clustered together in careful rows, their rooftops visible from the valley below. Smoke from cooking fires drifted upward each evening, blending with the steam that rose naturally from the hill. The mountain rumbled from time to time, but never with urgency. It was a familiar presence, part of daily life. Then the ground began to change. Small cracks appeared in the earth, thin as threads at first. Doors no longer closed properly. Cups rattled on tables without explanation. Some villagers reported feeling vibrations beneath their feet, a slow pulsing that lasted only seconds before fading away. The warnings were subtle, easy to dismiss. One afternoon, the hill released a deep, resonant sound, not explosive, but heavy and sustained. Ash drifted into the air like gray snow. The sky dimmed. Before anyone could react, the ground beneath Ahinoho softened and shifted, as if the earth itself had turned fluid. The village did not burn. Buildings tilted and slid downward as the surface gave way. Walls cracked. Roofs disappeared inch by inch. People ran, but the ground pulled them back, swallowing paths and foundations alike. The eruption above forced the earth below to collapse inward, creating a slow, relentless descent. Within hours, Ahinoho vanished beneath the surface. By morning, the land had sealed itself. What remained was a wide stretch of uneven ground, warm to the touch and faintly steaming. No ruins. No visible remains. The village was gone, pressed beneath layers of compacted earth and cooled volcanic stone. Survivors never returned. The area was avoided, spoken of only in fragments. Over time, stories shifted from memory to legend. Maps showed nothing more than an empty slope. The volcano fell silent again, as if satisfied. Years passed. Then decades. It was during the first fog-heavy season after the eruption that something strange was noticed. At dawn, travelers reported seeing shapes in the mist at the base of the hill. By the time the fog lifted, the land looked normal again. At first, the reports were dismissed. Then more came. On foggy nights, when visibility dropped to only a few steps ahead, rooftops began to rise from the ground. Not fully, just enough to be recognized. Beams. Tiles. Edges where walls once met the sky. They emerged slowly, as if pushed upward from below by unseen pressure. With them came movement. Ghostly figures climbed out of the earth, their forms pale and indistinct, shaped more by suggestion than detail. They moved carefully, as though adjusting to the surface after a long absence. Some stood still, looking around in confusion. Others walked along paths that no longer existed, stepping through mist where streets had once been. Their faces showed no fear, only focus, as if following routines interrupted long ago. One figure might bend as though lifting something. Another paused beside a half-formed doorway. Their actions repeated the motions of daily life, performed without awareness of the present. As the night deepened, the village above ground grew clearer. More rooftops surfaced. Walls pressed through the soil. The outline of Ahinoho returned, incomplete but unmistakable, hovering between existence and memory. The fog wrapped around it, softening edges and muting sound. Then, just before dawn, it reversed. The figures faded first, dissolving into mist and shadow. The rooftops sank slowly back into the earth. The walls disappeared. The ground smoothed itself over once more, leaving no trace behind. By sunrise, the land was empty again. Those who have witnessed this say the air feels heavy during the event, thick with warmth rising from below. Instruments detect nothing unusual. No seismic activity. No heat spikes. The earth appears stable. Yet the pattern repeats. Foggy nights bring the village back. Clear nights remain silent. Elders believe Ahinoho never truly escaped the eruption. They say the village was not destroyed, but trapped between layers of the earth, held in a state of unfinished descent. The fog, they believe, creates a thin boundary, allowing the memory of the place to surface. Others say the mountain keeps what it takes, but sometimes allows it to be seen. No one is advised to approach when the village rises. Those who step too close report dizziness and disorientation. Some lose track of time. Others feel an intense pull toward the emerging structures, a sense of familiarity they cannot explain. By dawn, all evidence is gone. Ahinoho rests once more beneath the surface, quiet and unseen. But on certain nights, when the fog rolls in and the volcanic hill breathes softly, the village remembers where it once stood. And for a few hours, it rises to meet the air again, only to vanish before the sun can see it. The village of Kala'ahi once rested at the edge of a vast forest where mist clung to the trees long after sunrise. The land was fertile, shaped by old lava flows that had cooled into rich soil. Life there followed steady rhythms, guided by seasons, stories, and respect for unseen forces believed to dwell within the mountain. Kala'ahi was known for its harmony. Homes were spaced carefully, paths were kept clear. And ceremonies honored both the living and the land itself. At the heart of the village stood a gathering place where elders shared knowledge passed down through generations. Among them was a kahuna, respected for wisdom and guidance, whose presence once brought reassurance rather than fear. That balance fractured quietly. Disagreements arose over leadership and tradition, subtle at first, then increasingly bitter. Whispers replaced open discussion. Trust thinned. The kahuna, once central to village life, found influence slipping away as others questioned decisions and sought change. Pride hardened into resentment, and resentment into something darker. The mountain stirred soon after. A thin glow appeared one night beyond the tree line, steady and focused. It did not spread outward like previous lava flows had. Instead, it advanced in a narrow channel, cutting directly toward Kala'ahi. The forest on either side remained untouched, leaves unmoving, branches unburned. Only the path toward the village glowed with slow, deliberate heat. People watched in disbelief as lava crossed ground that had never burned before. It ignored slopes and natural barriers, following a line too precise to be coincidence. Paths melted away. Stone walls cracked. Yet just beyond the village boundary, the forest stood unchanged, green and silent. Panic followed. Families gathered belongings as ash began to fall. Some prayed. Some argued. Some refused to believe what they were seeing. The lava did not rush. It crept, steady and patient, as if certain of its destination. Those who fled did so under a sky dimmed by smoke, glancing back at a village already half lost. By dawn, Kala'ahi was empty. Lava flowed through the center of the village, filling spaces where homes had stood, sealing memories beneath hardened rock. When it finally slowed and cooled, it stopped abruptly, forming a dark ring around the ruins. Beyond that boundary, the forest resumed as if nothing had happened. The forest was silent. No birds called from the canopy. No insects moved through the undergrowth. Leaves did not rustle even when wind passed through the trees. Sound itself seemed to vanish beyond a certain point, swallowed by the stillness. Footsteps felt too loud, breaths too sharp. At the edge of the lava field, the air grew heavy. Visitors described an unsettling sensation of being observed, though nothing could be seen. The quiet pressed in from all sides, thick and deliberate. Some reported hearing breathing nearby, slow and measured, yet when they turned, there was no one there. The sound did not echo. It simply existed. Theories spread cautiously. Some believed the kahuna had placed a curse in a final act of anger, binding the village to the mountain. Others suggested the silence was a natural response, animals driven away by lingering heat and unfamiliar terrain. Yet none could explain why the forest remained lifeless decades later, long after the ground had cooled. Explorers who ventured deeper rarely stayed long. Equipment malfunctioned without warning. Compasses spun uselessly. Voices sounded distant, even when spoken aloud. Those who lingered reported headaches, pressure behind the eyes, and the persistent sense of another presence sharing their space. The breathing followed them, never close enough to locate, never far enough to escape. At night, the silence deepened. Stars shone brightly above Kala'ahi, unobstructed by smoke or cloud. The lava fields reflected faint light, smooth and black. From the forest edge came no sound of nocturnal life. Only the steady rhythm of breath could sometimes be heard, slow and calm, as if the land itself inhaled and exhaled. No footprints were ever found near the ruins. No signs of animals returning. No nests, no tracks, no signs of decay. They speak of the jealous kahuna whose anger shaped fire. Of a village marked by betrayal, of a forest that learned to hold its breath. Elders warn travelers not to enter the silence, not to listen for too long to sounds that cannot be explained. Kala'ahi endures as a place left unfinished. The lava lies cold now, cracked and dark. The forest still stands, unnaturally still. And those who stand at the edge, listening in the quiet, sometimes realize the breathing they hear does not match their own. Naupali Lehu once stood on a gentle rise overlooking a narrow valley where wind moved softly through tall grass. The village was modest and orderly, built with care and patience. Homes were spaced evenly, paths worn smooth by years of use. At night, oil lamps glowed behind woven screens. And the sounds of quiet living carried easily through the dark. The people of Naupali Lehu were known for their attentiveness to one another. Doors were left unlocked. Children slept easily. There was a shared belief that the land protected those who respected it. For a long time, nothing challenged that sense of safety. It started with a feeling rather than an event. Villagers reported waking suddenly, breath shallow, hearts racing for no clear reason. The air felt heavy, as if weight pressed down from above. Some described the sensation as hands on the chest, not painful, but firm enough to steal breath and force stillness. When they finally managed to sit up, the feeling vanished. Soon after, people began noticing movement at the edges of their vision. Shadows that did not match the shape of furniture or walls. Dark forms that seemed to crouch low in corners, just beyond the reach of lamplight. When looked at directly, they were gone. When ignored, the sense of being watched returned. Families gathered at dawn to share stories, discovering the experiences were not isolated. The details varied, but the pattern remained the same. The pressure during sleep. The feeling of presence. The shadows that avoided direct attention. No one reported sounds or voices. The silence itself felt deliberate. As weeks passed, physical marks appeared. Thin scratches on arms, legs, and shoulders. Always shallow, never bleeding. Often arranged in uneven lines, as if made without intent. Those affected had no memory of injury. Bedding showed no signs of damage. Nails were checked. Animals were ruled out. No explanation satisfied the growing unease. Elders attempted to restore calm through tradition. Lamps were kept burning longer into the night. Protective symbols were placed near doorways. Group sleeping became common, with families choosing to rest together in shared spaces. For a short time, the activity seemed to lessen. Then it returned, stronger and more persistent. Those who stayed awake through the night reported a strange distortion of time. Hours felt compressed. The boundary between waking and dreaming blurred. Even without sleep, the pressure returned, pinning the body without visible cause. Eyes could move. Breath could not deepen. Panic followed, then release, leaving exhaustion in its wake. No one ever saw a clear figure. The decision to leave was gradual, not sudden. One family departed quietly, then another. Livestock was moved first, followed by tools and personal items. No one announced their plans openly. The village thinned week by week, until only a few remained. They held on, hoping the presence would fade with time. It did not. On the final night before Na Pali Lehu was fully abandoned, those remaining gathered outside under open sky. No one wanted to sleep indoors. Even there, beneath stars and wind, the sensation returned. The wait. The watching. The shadows stretching unnaturally long despite the lack of light. By morning, the decision was complete. Na Pali Lehu was left behind. Years later, visitors drawn by curiosity began to explore the empty village. Structures still stood, preserved by dry air and careful construction. Inside, rooms felt orderly, as if occupants had only stepped away. During the day, the village seemed harmless. Almost welcoming. Night told a different story. Those who stayed after sunset reported the same sensations described long ago. Sudden pressure on the chest while lying down. An inability to move or call out. Shadows pooling in corners that did not match the shape of the room. Sleep became fragmented, filled with vivid half-dreams that ended abruptly. Some visitors awoke with scratches they could not explain. Others left before dawn, unsettled but unharmed. A few returned home carrying a lingering sense of unease that followed them for days, fading only slowly. Researchers who attempted overnight stays documented elevated stress responses without obvious cause. Heart rate spiked during sleep cycles. Breathing patterns became irregular. Environmental readings showed nothing unusual. No structural instability. No toxins. No animals. The village offered no physical explanation for the experiences reported. Local belief holds that Na Pali Lehu sits in a place where awareness gathers. Not a single entity, but a condition. A focus of attention that does not sleep. The idea suggests that prolonged human presence shaped the land, and something within it learned the pattern of watching in return. Na Pali Lehu remains standing, but it is no longer lived in. Paths grow faint. Roofs age slowly. Wind moves freely through open doorways. Yet few choose to stay long. The sense of being observed returns quickly, as if the village recognizes the presence of new sleepers. The abandonment was not caused by visible danger, but by erosion of certainty. The loss of privacy in the most vulnerable moments. The inability to rest without feeling claimed by unseen attention. In the end, leaving was the only way to reclaim peace. And so Na Pali Lehu waits, unchanged and quiet. A place where nights are never fully empty. Where the feeling of being watched lingers, patient and unblinking, long after the last footsteps have faded away. The ruins of Ko'olua rest in a high basin where wind moves slowly and clouds linger longer than they should. From a distance, the land appears calm. Dark stone walls sit half buried in ash. The crater beside them looks silent, its rim softened by time and weather. Maps label it dormant, inactive, finished. Locals disagree. The first thing noticed when approaching Ko'olua is the ground. It does not shake. It pulses. A slow, steady rhythm felt more than heard, like a heartbeat beneath layers of stone. The sensation travels upward through the feet and legs, subtle but undeniable. Those who stop walking feel it most clearly. The settlement was built close to the crater by design. Stone platforms align with its rim. Pathways curve inward rather than away. Every structure faces the depression in the earth, as if drawn toward it. Nothing in Ko'olua turns its back on the crater. Long ago, the village thrived. Crops grew despite thin soil. Water remained warm even in cold seasons. Families spoke of comfort that came easily, of rest that felt deeper here than anywhere else. The crater provided heat that rose gently from the ground, warming homes without flame. At night, a faint glow sometimes illuminated the basin. Not fire, but a soft amber light that breathed in and out, brightening and dimming with the pulse below. Children slept easily during these nights. Elders listened. The voices began as dreams. Villagers reported hearing murmurs while resting near the crater. Low and reassuring sounds that seemed to come from beneath the earth. The voices carried no urgency. They promised warmth during storms. Safety during illness. Relief from exhaustion. Those who listened felt calmer, stronger, more certain of staying. Over time, the voices followed them into waking hours. They were never loud. Never clear enough to repeat. But they were persistent. Standing too close to the crater, one could feel the words rather than hear them, like thoughts offered gently from below. Many described the same sensation, an invitation to sit, to rest, to trust. The ground grew warmer. Measurements taken years later would show nothing unusual. But those who lived there felt it. Stone floors warmed beneath bare feet. The pulse grew stronger at night. Some villagers began sleeping outdoors near the crater, drawn by the comfort radiating upward. Not everyone listened. A few spoke of unease. Of the pulse quickening when attention was given to the whispers. Of the crater responding, not violently, but attentively. They noticed cracks forming where none had been before. Steam rising in thin lines, then vanishing. The concerns were dismissed. The crater had always provided. It had never harmed. The final season came quietly. Crops failed despite warm soil. Water sources grew cloudy. The voices changed, becoming more insistent. Less comforting. They promised relief not just from cold or fatigue, but from fear, from doubt, from the weight of living above the surface. Some villagers stopped leaving the crater's edge. One morning, several homes stood empty. Tools lay untouched. Food remained prepared but uneaten. No tracks led away from the basin. Only paths descending toward the crater showed signs of recent use. The village gathered and waited. The pulse grew louder that night, strong enough to be heard as a low thrum in the air. The ground glowed faintly beneath the stars. The voices rose together, no longer whispers but a chorus felt through bone and breath. They promised unity. They promised peace. By dawn, Ko'olua was silent. Those who remained had left during the night. They carried stories but little else. None could fully explain what had happened. They only agreed on one thing. The crater was not empty. Centuries later, explorers found the ruins intact. Walls still stood. Platforms remained smooth and warm to the touch even after sunset. Instruments detected faint vibrations at regular intervals, too consistent to dismiss, too gentle to alarm. At night, visitors report hearing murmurs when the wind drops. Words without language. Sounds that feel directed, personal, kind. Many describe an urge to sit near the crater, to rest, to stay longer than planned. The warmth is undeniable. Those who camp nearby sleep deeply, sometimes too deeply. Dreams become vivid, filled with images of stone and light and descent. Some wake with the sense that time has passed differently than expected. Hours gone. Fires burned low. No eruptions have occurred. No lava has surfaced. Yet the pulse continues, steady and patient. Locals warn against listening. They say the crater does not burn. It invites. That it offers comfort freely. But asks something in return. Not suddenly. Not violently. Only gradually, as trust builds and boundaries soften. Ko'olua remains officially classified as inactive. Trails pass nearby but do not linger. No structures are rebuilt. No ceremonies are held. Still, when the ground pulses beneath quiet feet, and the warmth rises gently from below, the feeling is difficult to ignore. Beneath the ruins, beneath layers of cooled stone, something remains awake. Breathing slowly. Waiting for those who are tired enough to listen. The village of Hina-Ahi once stood where rain clouds gathered low and rivers cut narrow paths through stone. It was a place shaped by water and sound, where rainfall was constant and the land echoed easily. The people believed the rhythm of rain connected them to something older than the village itself. At dawn, voices rose softly with the mist. At night, chants marked the closing of doors and the settling of fires. The sound was never aggressive or demanding. It was steady, layered, and deliberate, meant to guide balance between the village and the land around it. Rain fell without pause, heavier than usual, drumming against roofs and flooding paths. As darkness settled, the chanting grew louder instead of fading. More voices joined in. The rhythm slowed, deepened, and stretched far beyond its usual time. The sound filled every space. Homes vibrated with it. The ground seemed to hum beneath bare feet. The rain intensified, blurring vision and drowning out everything except the voices. Those who tried to leave their homes found the paths confusing, twisting into unfamiliar shapes under sheets of water. By midnight, the chanting surrounded the village completely. It no longer came from a single place. It rose from the ground, from the trees, from the rain itself. Individual voices became impossible to separate. The sound pressed inward, circling tighter and tighter, as though enclosing the village at its center. Then, abruptly, silence followed. When the rain stopped the next morning, Hina-Ahi was gone. No signs of struggle remained. Homes stood empty. Fires were cold. Tools lay where they had been dropped. There were no bodies, no footprints leading away, no indication that anyone had fled. The village appeared abandoned in a single instant. Those who came searching found only stillness. Over time, the buildings collapsed and were reclaimed by vegetation. Paths washed away. The name Hina Ahi faded into rumor. Mentioned only when storms lingered too long over the hills. Years passed before the chanting returned. It began during heavy rain, faint at first, barely audible beneath the downpour. Travelers noticed it as a vibration more than a sound, a low resonance that made the chest feel tight. As the rain continued, the chanting grew clearer, rising above the storm in layered tones. It did not come from one direction. The sound moved with the rain, echoing from all sides at once. Anyone who paused to listen felt it closing in, the rhythm shifting subtly to match their breathing. The longer they stood still, the louder it became. Those caught in it described the same sensation. The air thickened. Distance became difficult to judge. The chanting seemed to step closer with every heartbeat, forming a circle that tightened slowly but deliberately. It did not rush. Some reported hearing familiar voices within the sound, though they could not identify them. Others felt compelled to follow the rhythm deeper into the rain, drawn toward places where the ground dipped and water pooled. Those who resisted said the chanting responded. It grew sharper, more focused, as if acknowledging awareness. The rain fell harder. The rain finally stopped, the chanting faded with it. The land returned to silence, leaving behind no physical trace. Instruments recorded nothing unusual. No geological activity. No atmospheric anomalies. Only those who heard it remembered. Elders believe the chanting never caused the disappearance of Hina Ahi. They believe it completed something. According to old accounts, the village used chanting to maintain balance, to keep boundaries clear between the living world and whatever listened beneath the rain. That final night, they say, the boundaries shifted. The chant did not summon anything. It answered something that had always been there. Now, when heavy rain falls long enough, the sound returns. It searches. Those who remain calm and keep moving usually escape its reach. Those who stop, who listen too closely, feel it gather around them, matching their presence, adjusting its rhythm to their pulse. The chanting does not threaten. It does not command. It surrounds. By dawn, the rain clears, the sound vanishes, and the land looks unchanged. But those who heard it carry the memory long after. They speak of a sensation of being counted, measured, and briefly included in something vast and unseen. Hina Ahi no longer exists as a place. It exists as a sound that returns when the rain is heavy enough, growing louder, circling closer, waiting patiently for anyone who dares to listen. Puka Lehu once stood where the forest thinned and the ground darkened with old ash. It was a village shaped by patience, built slowly between trees that had grown tall and careful. The people learned the language of wind and rain, and they understood the warning signs of fire long before smoke ever rose. For many years, the balance held. The forest provided shade and shelter. Small clearings allowed light to reach the ground. Paths were kept open, winding gently between homes and groves. At night, the air carried familiar scents of damp earth and leaves cooling after warm days. Puka Lehu slept easily, surrounded by life. The first change was subtle. Trees near the edge of the village began to grow at strange angles. Their trunks bent inward, not toward light, but toward the center of Puka Lehu. Branches crossed where they once spread freely. Leaves clustered thickly, forming shapes that seemed intentional when viewed from certain angles. People noticed, but forests are always changing, and concern faded quickly. Then came the heat. Dry seasons grew longer. The ground cracked earlier each year. Small fires appeared deeper in the forest, distant and controlled at first. Smoke drifted above the canopy, thin and pale, then vanished. The village prepared as it always had, clearing brush and watching the wind. One night, the forest did not settle. A low glow spread between the trees, uneven and restless. The air warmed rapidly, carrying a sharp scent that did not belong to wood alone. Flames moved faster than expected, leaping across spaces that should have slowed them. The fire did not roar. It whispered and crept, guided by wind that shifted without pattern. People fled as embers fell like dark snow. Some escaped along paths they had walked their entire lives. Others turned back, searching for family or possessions. The fire twisted around the village rather than passing through it. Trees leaned inward as flames wrapped their bases. Heat pressed from all sides, leaving no clear direction to run. By morning, Puka-Lehu was gone. What remained was a ring of blackened ground and ruins pressed low beneath ash. Yet the forest still stood. Trees survived where they should not have, scorched but alive. New growth began almost immediately, sprouting from soil still warm to the touch. In the weeks that followed, the forest reclaimed everything. Vines crawled over stone. Roots split walls apart. Trees twisted further, their trunks curling around the remains of homes as if protecting them from view. Leaves grew thick and glossy, overlapping in layers that blocked sunlight completely. Visitors arrived later, drawn by rumors and curiosity. They described an unsettling quiet beneath the canopy. Sound seemed absorbed by the leaves. When light shifted, patterns appeared across the foliage. Faces formed briefly in clusters of leaves, defined by shadow and highlight, then dissolved when approached. No two visitors described the same faces. Some appeared calm. Some appeared strained. All vanished quickly, leaving behind the sense of being observed. The wind carried something else as well. On certain days, when air flowed from the heart of the ruins outward, a sharp, bitter scent followed. Authorities investigated and found nothing unusual. No active heat sources. No chemical explanation. The forest floor was cool and damp. Yet the scent returned, faint and persistent, as if memory itself had a presence. Those who lingered too long reported strange sensations. Time felt uneven. Minutes stretched, then vanished. Some felt pressure in their chest, a tightening that eased only when they left the forest edge. Others reported hearing soft sounds beneath the leaves, not voices, but movements that suggested many small motions happening at once. Equipment often failed. Audio recordings picked up low rustling even when the air was still. Compasses drifted slightly off course, correcting themselves once removed from the area. Years passed, and Puka-Lehu became a warning rather than a destination. Paths leading toward the ruins were left unmaintained. Signs advised caution without explanation. Locals avoided the forest after sunset. Especially when wind moved inward rather than outward. Elders spoke quietly of a place that burned twice. Once by fire, and once by growth. At night, the forest looks unchanged. Stars shine through gaps in the canopy. Leaves reflect moonlight softly. Yet the stillness feels deliberate. As if the forest is listening. When wind passes through, branches sway together. Tightening around the space where Puka-Lehu once stood. No animals make homes there. No nests are found. No tracks remain. Life circles the area without entering it, leaving a hollow pocket of green that feels complete but unused. Puka-Lehu endures beneath twisted trees and layered leaves, consumed not only by flame, but by what followed. The forest holds its shape, the ruins hold their silence. And the air carries traces of something that refuses to fade. The village of Luapo was built on dark volcanic soil that held warmth long after sunset. It rested between two ancient lava vents that rose like blackened hills on either side of the valley. Thin wisps of steam escaped from cracks in the rock, but nothing more. The villagers believed the land was powerful, yet stable. The heat enriched crops. Stone hardened well. Life settled into dependable patterns. Luapa grew carefully. Homes were positioned to face the valley opening, with the vents always visible but distant enough to feel harmless. Paths were paved with cooled lava stone, smooth from years of footsteps. At night, the ground radiated faint warmth, and the village lights reflected softly against the dark slopes. The vents became landmarks rather than threats. Elders taught respect for the earth. They warned that the vents were linked, like two sides of the same breath. Decades passed without change, and caution slowly turned into confidence. The first sign came as a vibration beneath the feet. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. Cups trembled. Hanging tools clicked softly against walls. Animals grew restless, refusing to settle. The air felt heavier, warmer than usual, even at night. Steam thickened along the vents, rising in steady columns instead of drifting away. Then, without warning, both vents awakened. A deep sound rolled through the valley, low and resonant, felt more than heard. The ground shook violently as molten rock surged upward from both sides at once. Firelight illuminated the sky, turning night into a shifting red glow. Lava spilled outward, slow but unstoppable, cutting off the village exit within minutes. The people of Luapa were trapped between twin walls of heat. Panic spread quickly, but escape routes vanished as the flows advanced. The valley narrowed, smoke thickened, and ash filled the air. Buildings near the slopes ignited, collapsing under falling debris and heat. The roar of the vents drowned out voices. The earth itself seemed to close in, sealing the village inside its grasp. When the eruption finally slowed, nothing remained intact. Lava hardened where homes once stood. Paths disappeared beneath layers of black stone. The valley entrance was sealed by cooled rock, forming a natural barrier. When the sky cleared days later, Luapa was no longer visible from a distance. It had been buried and reshaped into part of the volcanic landscape. Years passed. Wind carved channels through ash. Sparse plants took root in cracks. The vents fell silent once more, standing dark and still against the horizon. From above, the site appeared empty. Just stone, slope, and shadow. No smoke. No sound. No sign of life. Travelers moving through the region at night noticed shapes near the valley entrance. Two tall shadows standing side by side, unmoving. They appeared darker than the surrounding darkness, their outlines sharp against moonlit stone. From a distance, they looked like people standing watch. As observers approached, the shapes did not retreat. They remained fixed, facing outward. Those who stopped to watch described an overwhelming sense of attention. Not hostility, not invitation, but awareness. When clouds covered the moon, the shapes vanished. When light returned, they stood again in the same place. No footprints were ever found. Researchers visiting during daylight hours documented unusual acoustic effects near the entrance. Sounds echoed incorrectly, as if space folded inward. Footsteps sounded doubled. Equipment recorded faint low-frequency vibrations long after the vents were confirmed inactive. Locals began avoiding the area after sunset. They spoke of Luapa as a place caught between moments. The twin vents were believed to have acted together, not just in eruption, but in memory. Two forces sealing the same instant from opposite sides. Some believe the shadows represent the vents themselves, given form by heat and loss. Others say they are remnants of the village guardians, shaped by the final moments of watchfulness and fear. No theory explains why they appear only at night, or why they remain at the entrance rather than within the ruins. Those who camp too close often report restless sleep. Dreams of narrow spaces. Heat pressing in from both sides. The sensation of being observed without judgment, as if something waits to see whether they will enter. Most leave before morning. At dawn, the valley appears empty again. The shadows are gone. The stone is still. Sunlight reveals nothing unusual, only hardened lava shaped like frozen waves. Birds avoid the entrance. Wind moves around it rather than through it. Luapa does not call attention to itself. It does not reach outward. It waits. The village that once thrived between twin vents no longer exists as a place of living people. But the land remembers the moment when escape closed and time narrowed to a single breath. Each night, the entrance is marked. Two shapes. Two presences. Standing where the village once opened to the world. Watching. Deep within the densest stretch of forest, beyond marked trails and fading footpaths, lies a place known as Ahimomo. Few speak its name aloud. Fewer still admit it exists at all. The forest surrounding it grows thicker with every mile. Branches overlapping until sunlight breaks into fragments that never quite reach the ground. The air changes as travelers move deeper. It becomes heavy, warm, and strangely still. Sounds dull and flatten, as if absorbed by layers of leaves and moss. Even birds seem reluctant to sing here. Footsteps soften, then vanish altogether, swallowed by soil that feels more like cloth than earth. Those who enter this region often describe an immediate sense of calm. Muscles loosen. Thoughts slow. Worries that once felt urgent begin to drift away. It feels natural to stop walking, to breathe deeply, to rest. This is how the forest welcomes visitors. The path to Ahimomo does not announce itself. There are no ruins at first, no stone markers or broken walls. Only a gradual thinning of trees and a gentle slope downward into a clearing where the light dims further, not from shade, but from something softer, like twilight that never ends. At the center of the clearing lies the village. Its structures are simple, built low and wide, woven from wood and vine rather than stone. Roofs curve downward like folded leaves. Nothing appears damaged or abandoned. Everything looks prepared, maintained, waiting. Yet no smoke rises. No movement disturbs the stillness. The ground looks inviting, layered with thick moss and fallen petals that form a natural bed. Many sit down without realizing they have chosen to. The fatigue deepens quickly. Eyes grow heavy. Breathing slows. The forest seems to lean inward, branches arching slightly, leaves rustling with a sound like a lullaby carried by wind. The air feels warmer near the ground, comforting, familiar. Some describe hearing faint voices, not words, but tones that suggest reassurance. Others feel a presence nearby, not threatening, simply attentive. The village does not demand rest. It offers it. Those who attempt to fight the exhaustion find their thoughts slipping. Memories blur at the edges. Purpose fades. The idea of leaving feels distant, unnecessary, even unkind. Why struggle, when rest feels so complete? Locals tell stories of hunters who vanished after boasting they would find the hidden village. Search parties returned empty-handed, reporting overwhelming drowsiness long before reaching the suspected area. They spoke of needing to lie down, just for a moment, and waking hours later with no memory of how they got there. No one has ever returned from Ahimomo itself. Elders say the forest learned long ago how to keep what enters it. That the trees are not passive, but aware, responding to footsteps and heartbeats. They speak of roots that sense movement, leaves that release unseen scents, and soil that radiates warmth meant to calm and slow. According to legend, the village was once inhabited by people who sought perfect rest. They believed true peace could only be found by surrendering completely to the land. Over time, they stopped leaving. Eventually, they stopped waking. Whether the village was built for this purpose, or shaped into it by the forest, is unknown. Modern explorers who study the region report unusual readings. Oxygen levels remain normal. No toxins are detected. Yet prolonged exposure leads to extreme fatigue, disorientation, and loss of motivation. Instruments feel heavier. Notes trail off mid-sentence. Many researchers abandon the effort, citing an unshakable need to sleep. The forest resists disturbance. Clearing attempts fail as vegetation regrows rapidly. Trails vanish overnight. Markers are found fallen, gently placed on the ground as if set aside rather than knocked down. At night, the clearing glows faintly, illuminated by fireflies and bioluminescent plants that pulse in slow, steady rhythms. The village appears peaceful, almost welcoming. Roofs gleam softly. Paths shine with dew that never dries. From a distance, Ahimomo looks like a place of comfort. Those who pass near its outer edge sometimes feel the pull without seeing the village at all. A sudden urge to sit. To close their eyes. To rest just a little longer than planned. Most manage to leave, shaken by how difficult it felt to stand up again. Locals warn travelers never to sleep in the deep forest. Never to lie down, no matter how tired they feel. They say the forest does not chase or trap. It waits. Patient and gentle, it offers what many seek most. Ahimomo remains unmapped and officially unconfirmed. Authorities dismiss it as folklore shaped by exhaustion and terrain. Yet the forest remains untouched, its deepest paths avoided by those who know the stories. And somewhere beneath the canopy, where light fades and sound softens, a village lies in eternal stillness. Not abandoned. Not ruined. Simply sleeping. Waiting for those who are too tired to keep moving. You have now walked through 20 haunted volcanic forest villages of Hawaii. Places where fire met forest. Where ancient beliefs clashed with Naturia's fury. And where the dead refused to rest. These villages may look peaceful in daylight. Covered in green. Bathed in sunlight. But when night falls, the forest remembers. The volcano remembers. And the spirits remember you. If you ever travel through Hawaii's volcanic forests, respect the land. Listen to the warnings. And never follow voices into the trees. Because some paths do not lead back. Thank you for spending this time with me. Rest your mind. Calm your breathing. And when the forest grows quiet around you tonight, remember. Silence does not always mean you are alone. Until our next journey into the darkness.